The worst part about being betrayed in front of 200 people was realizing nobody looked surprised. Ethan Miller stood beneath the crystal lights of the Hart family ballroom with a champagne flute in one hand and a silver engagement speech card trembling in the other, watching his entire life collapse on a 30-foot projection screen behind Caleb Hart's smiling face. 1 second, the party had been perfect in that expensive, suffocating way rich people loved. White roses on every table. A jazz quartet near the marble staircase. Servers moving through the room with tiny crab cakes and sparkling water in glasses too delicate to hold without feeling poor. Ethan had spent 40 minutes in the restroom convincing himself his navy suit fit fine, that his hair looked intentional instead of nervous, and that tonight Caleb would finally stop introducing him as someone special and start calling him his fiancé. Then the screen changed. At first, Ethan thought it was a mistake, some slideshow glitch from the hotel staff. The image flickered, the music stuttered, and every conversation in the ballroom thinned into silence. Caleb, standing on the stage with a microphone in his hand, went pale. That was the first thing Ethan noticed. Not the video, not the familiar hallway in the background. Caleb's face, the quick, guilty flash in his eyes before he covered it with a smile too smooth to be human. Then Ethan saw Ryan Brooks, his best friend, his emergency contact, the guy who had once sat on Ethan's kitchen floor at 2 a.m. eating cold pizza and promising that Caleb was lucky to have him. Ryan was in the video, standing too close to Caleb in the private dressing room upstairs, whispering something Ethan could not hear, but somehow understood anyway. Caleb touched Ryan's cheek with the kind of tenderness Ethan had begged for in pieces, in texts left unread, in dinners canceled for meetings that probably never existed. A low murmur rolled through the ballroom. Someone dropped a fork. Someone gasped softly, not with concern, but with the hungry excitement of people discovering they had front-row seats to a scandal. Ethan's fingers tightened around the champagne flute, until the cold glass pressed into his palm. He did not cry. That felt important. If he cried, they would all get to feel sorry for him, and somehow that would make it worse. Caleb stepped down from the stage fast, still wearing that perfect black tuxedo, still beautiful in the cruelest way. Ethan, he said quietly, like Ethan was a problem to manage. Don't make a scene. Ethan almost laughed. The scene was already alive around him, breathing through every whisper and camera phone half hidden behind manicured hands. Ryan stood near the side doors, eyes red, mouth parted like he wanted forgiveness without having to ask for it. Ethan looked at him once and felt something inside him go very still. Not empty, not broken. Still, like a lake freezing over in the middle of spring. Was it true? Ethan asked. His voice came out smaller than he wanted, but clear enough for Caleb to hear. Caleb's jaw tightened. This is complicated. There it was. Not no. Not I'm sorry. Complicated. Ethan nodded slowly, because if he stopped moving he might disappear right there on the polished floor. Behind Caleb, his mother approached with a tight smile and diamond earrings bright enough to look armed. Ethan, sweetheart, she murmured, touching his elbow like they were discussing seating arrangements instead of public humiliation. We can handle this privately. The families have already signed agreements. Let's not embarrass everyone. Everyone. Ethan stared at her hand on his sleeve, then at Caleb, then at Ryan. A strange thought floated through his mind, calm and ridiculous. I bought new shoes for this. Caleb leaned closer, lowering his voice. You still belong with me. Come upstairs, and we'll fix it. The words should have hurt. Instead, they snapped something cleanly in half. Ethan pulled his arm free. For the first time all night, Caleb looked uncertain. Then the ballroom doors opened. Not loudly, not dramatically, just one smooth movement, followed by a silence so sharp it made every head turn. Adrian Blackwood walked in wearing a charcoal coat over an all-black suit, his white blonde hair neatly brushed back, his expression unreadable. Ethan knew his name because everyone in Caleb's world said it like a warning. Cold-blooded. Untouchable. The one rival Caleb never joked about. Adrian was not on the guest list. Nobody asked him to leave. He crossed the ballroom as if the room had been built only to give him somewhere to walk, and when his gray eyes settled on Ethan, the whispers died completely. Caleb went rigid beside him. Adrian stopped a few feet away, glanced once at the frozen video screen, then back at Ethan. His voice was low, calm, almost gentle. Do you want me to end this conversation for you? Ethan's heart kicked hard against his ribs. Caleb grabbed his wrist. "Stay out of this, Blackwood." Ethan looked down at Caleb's hand, then up at Adrian. Something reckless rose in him, born from shame and champagne bubbles and 3 years of being told to be patient. He stepped out of Caleb's grip and toward the one man everyone feared. "Claim me," Ethan said, loud enough for the front tables to hear. Adrian did not smile. He only studied Ethan for one long second, as if making sure the choice was really his. Then he removed a black ring from his own hand, slid it onto Ethan's finger, and said, "Done." For one breath, nobody moved. Ethan stared at the ring on his finger as if it had fallen from the sky instead of Adrian Blackwood's hand. It was heavier than it looked, matte black with a thin silver line through the center, cool against his skin and impossible to ignore. The ballroom seemed to tilt around him. White roses, polished marble, stunned faces, Caleb's hand still hanging in the air where Ethan had pulled away. Then the whispers returned all at once, sharper this time, spreading from table to table like spilled ink. Caleb's expression cracked first. Not fully. Caleb Hart was too trained for that. But the edge of his perfect mouth twitched, and his blue eyes flashed with something ugly beneath the charm. "Take it off," he said. Ethan almost obeyed out of habit. That was the humiliating part. 3 years of loving someone who corrected the way he dressed, the way he laughed, the way he stood beside him in public had turned obedience into muscle memory. His fingers lifted halfway toward the ring before Adrian spoke. "He can take it off when he wants to." The sentence was quiet, but it landed harder than Caleb's anger. Ethan's hand froze. Caleb looked at Adrian with a smile that had no warmth in it. "You have no idea what you are touching." Adrian's gaze did not leave Ethan. "I know exactly who I am standing beside." Something in Ethan's chest tightened. Not hope. Hope felt too dangerous. This was smaller, stranger, like finding one working flashlight in a house after the power died. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice, but there were too many people watching now for privacy to survive. "Ethan, you are upset. You are embarrassed. Let us leave before you make a choice you cannot undo." Ethan looked at him then, really looked. Caleb's tuxedo was flawless. His hair was perfect. His eyes were impatient, not sorry. Behind him, Ryan wiped his face with a cocktail napkin and stared at the floor as if the carpet might rescue him. Ethan remembered every time he had defended them both. Every lunch where Ryan had asked if Caleb was treating him well. Every late night when Caleb said he was busy with work. Every tiny suspicion Ethan had swallowed because love was supposed to trust. His throat felt tight, but his voice came out steady. "I already made one choice I regret." Caleb flinched like the words had touched a bruise. Adrian turned slightly, placing himself between Ethan and the room without trapping him. "We are leaving," he said. "Only if he walks out on his own." That mattered. Ethan hated that it mattered. Adrian did not grab his wrist, did not steer him by the shoulder, did not say sweetheart in that careful, controlling way Caleb's mother had used. He simply waited. Ethan looked at the ballroom one last time. The guests were still staring, some with pity, some with judgment, some with phones lowered just enough to pretend they were not recording. His life had become entertainment in less than 10 minutes. Fine, let them watch the ending. Ethan reached down, picked up the small gift box he had dropped earlier, and placed it neatly on the nearest table. The watch inside had cost him $600 and 2 months of skipping takeout. It looked ridiculous now, wrapped in silver. Paper, meant for a man who had already spent the night betraying him. "Happy anniversary," Ethan said. Then he turned and walked beside Adrian Blackwood out of the Hart family ballroom. No one stopped them. Outside, the February air hit his face, cold enough to make his eyes sting. A black car waited at the curb beneath the hotel awning, its windows dark, its engine humming softly. Ethan suddenly realized his hands were shaking. Adrian noticed, but did not comment. He opened the back door and stepped aside. "You do not have to get in," he said. Ethan looked back through the glass doors. Caleb was standing in the lobby now, furious and frozen under the golden lights. Ryan hovered behind him like a shadow that had chosen the wrong body. Ethan turned toward the car. "If I do, what happens?" Adrian's eyes softened by a fraction. "The city talks by sunrise." Ethan gave a small, broken laugh. "The city is already talking." "Then by sunrise," Adrian said. "Caleb Hart understands he lost more than his reputation tonight." Ethan should have been afraid of that. Maybe he was. But when he looked at Adrian, All he saw was the first person who had asked him what he wanted before deciding what he deserved. So Ethan slid into the car, folded his trembling hands in his lap, and watched Adrian close the door gently, as if even now, even after claiming him in front of everyone, he knew Ethan was not something to be owned. The car pulled away from the hotel before Ethan could decide whether he was escaping or making the worst decision of his life with better upholstery. The leather seat was warm beneath him, the city lights sliding across the window in gold and blue streaks, turning his reflection into someone pale, shaken, and wearing a stranger's ring. Adrian sat beside him, not too close, not too far, his hands relaxed over one knee like he had not just walked into a ballroom and cracked Ethan's entire future open with 3 words. For almost 5 minutes, neither of them spoke. Ethan counted traffic lights because counting was easier than thinking. 1 red light. 2. 3. His phone buzzed so many times in his jacket pocket that it began to feel alive. He pulled it out with numb fingers and saw 23 missed calls from Caleb, 9 from Ryan, 4 from Caleb's mother, and a flood of messages from people who had never cared whether Ethan ate dinner, but apparently cared very much that he had left a party with Adrian Blackwood. He turned the phone face down on his thigh. Adrian glanced at it once. You can block them. Ethan swallowed. That feels dramatic. So was projecting betrayal onto a ballroom screen. Ethan let out a laugh so sudden and broken it startled him. It was not happy. It barely sounded human. But it was a laugh, and for some reason that made his eyes burn harder than crying would have. He pressed his knuckles against his mouth and looked out the window. I should feel embarrassed. You were embarrassed by people who should have protected you, Adrian said. That is not the same thing as being embarrassing. Ethan turned toward him. The words were too clean, too accurate. They slid between his ribs and found the softest place there. Do you always talk like a therapist with a security team? Adrian's mouth moved almost into a smile. Almost. Only after midnight. The car crossed into a quieter part of downtown, where the buildings grew taller and the sidewalks cleaner, all glass towers and private entrances. They stopped beneath a high-rise with a doorman who straightened so quickly Ethan wondered if Adrian had trained gravity itself to behave. The lobby smelled like cedar, polished stone, and money that never had to explain itself. Ethan became painfully aware of his wrinkled suit, damp cuffs, and the small smear of frosting on one sleeve from the anniversary cake he had never gotten to open. Adrian noticed that too, because of course he did, but he said nothing. They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence. Ethan stared at the glowing numbers and tried not to imagine Caleb's face when he realized Ethan had not turned around. The penthouse doors opened directly into a living room larger than Ethan's entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a black marble fireplace, and a view of Chicago glittering beneath them like the city had been poured out in handfuls of broken stars. It was beautiful in a way that made Ethan feel even more out of place. Adrian stepped inside first, then moved aside. You can take the guest room at the end of the hall. The bathroom is private. There are fresh towels, unopened toiletries, and clothes in several sizes. Choose whatever fits. Ethan blinked. You keep emergency guest clothes? I keep solutions. That is either impressive or extremely concerning. Both can be true. Ethan hated that another small laugh escaped him. It made the room feel less like a museum and more like somewhere he could breathe. Adrian removed his coat and draped it over the back of a chair, then walked to a side table and picked up a sleek black phone still sealed in its box. Use this for tonight. Your current phone is compromised by everyone who thinks they are entitled to you. Ethan looked down at Caleb's messages lighting up again and again. The newest one read, "Answer me before you ruin everything." His thumb hovered over the screen. For 3 years, Ethan had answered. Fast, carefully, apologetically. Tonight, he powered the phone off. The silence that followed felt enormous. Adrian watched him, unreadable but not cold. Good, he said softly. Ethan looked at the ring again. What did I do back there? You made a choice while hurt. Adrian paused. Tomorrow, you can decide whether you still want that choice. Ethan's throat tightened. And if I do not, then I return the ring to my hand, and you leave with a driver, cash, and no debt. No debt. Ethan stared at him because he had expected a trap, a price, a fine print paragraph written in invisible ink. Caleb had always made kindness feel like a bill that would arrive later. Adrian simply stood there, giving him an exit in a room with locked elevators and private security. Somehow, that frightened Ethan more than being claimed had. Because if Adrian was not forcing him, then whatever happened next would belong to Ethan. Outside, the city kept shining. Inside, the black ring sat heavy on his finger, no longer just a stunt, not yet a promise, but something in between. Ethan curled his hand around it and whispered, "I think I need to sleep before I become even more reckless." Adrian nodded once and turned toward the hallway. "Then sleep. I will be here." Ethan followed him, trying not to feel comforted by that, and failing completely. Ethan woke to sunlight cutting across unfamiliar sheets and the terrible realization that heartbreak did not politely wait outside the bedroom door until after breakfast. For 3 seconds, he forgot where he was. The ceiling was too high, the room too quiet, the sheets too soft against his cheek. Then the night returned in bright, humiliating pieces. The screen, Ryan's face, Caleb's hand on his wrist, Adrian's ring sliding onto his finger while an entire ballroom forgot how to breathe. Ethan sat up so fast the room tilted. The guest room was larger than his old studio apartment, all pale walls, dark wood, and a window that looked down at Chicago from so high that the cars below seemed like moving coins. On the chair beside the bed, someone had placed folded clothes, a bottle of water, 2 pain relievers, and a handwritten note in neat black ink. Eat before reading anything online. That was it. No signature. No explanation. Somehow, the lack of drama made it worse. Ethan picked up the new phone Adrian had given him and immediately understood why the note existed. His name was everywhere. Society blogs, gossip accounts, private messages from people he had not spoken to since college. One blurry photo showed him leaving the hotel beside Adrian. Caleb in the background, looking like a prince who had just discovered the kingdom, had locked him out. Another headline called Ethan a mystery fiancé. A third said he had been secretly seeing Adrian for months, which was impressive, considering Ethan had met the man less than 12 hours ago and still was not sure whether Adrian owned a toaster. His stomach twisted, not because the rumors were cruel, though they were, because some small, petty, wounded part of him hoped Caleb was reading every single one. He found Caleb's messages on his old phone after powering it on for exactly 30 seconds. They came in a flood. "You are making a mistake. He is using you. You do not know what he is. Call me now." Then, finally, one message that made Ethan's fingers go cold. "You have no idea what you ruined." Ethan stared at that line until the letters blurred. A soft knock came at the door. Not a command. Not a test. Just 3 careful taps. "Are you awake?" Adrian asked from the other side. Ethan looked down at himself, still in yesterday's shirt, hair probably doing something tragic. "Unfortunately, yes. Breakfast is ready when you are." Ethan opened the door 10 minutes later wearing a gray sweater that almost fit and jeans rolled twice at the cuffs. Adrian was in the kitchen, sleeves pushed to his forearms, calmly pouring coffee like men with private security and citywide rumors always spent their mornings making toast. The contrast was so absurd, Ethan nearly laughed. "Do you cook?" he asked. "I assemble safe food." That sounds like something a robot says before poisoning someone with organic oatmeal. Adrian handed him a plate with scrambled eggs, toast, and sliced strawberries. "Then start with the strawberries. They are innocent." Ethan did laugh that time, quiet and surprised. It loosened something in his chest. He sat at the island, the black ring clicking softly against the coffee mug when he reached for it. Adrian noticed the sound, but did not mention it. "There are rules now," Adrian said after a moment. Ethan's shoulders tightened. Of course. There it was. The bill. The cage. The fine print. Adrian set his coffee down. "Not for ownership. For safety. You do not go anywhere alone for the next few days. You do not answer unknown numbers. You do not accept packages, especially flowers. And if Caleb asks to meet, you tell me before you decide." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Before I decide?" "Yes. It is still your decision." That landed quietly, but it landed deep. Caleb had always wrapped control in romance. Adrian wrapped protection in permission. Ethan hated how different it felt. "Why flowers?" he asked. Adrian's face changed by almost nothing, but the room seemed to cool around him. White roses were used in the ballroom. Caleb knows symbols matter. If he sends them, it will not be an apology. It will be a reminder. Ethan looked toward the windows, where the city glittered like it had no shame. He used to send white roses after every fight, he said softly. I thought it meant he was sorry. Adrian was silent for a long second. Then he said, some people do not apologize. They decorate the damage. Ethan's throat tightened so quickly, he had to look down at his plate. The eggs had gone blurry. He refused to cry into breakfast in front of Adrian Blackwood. That felt like losing twice before noon. I hate that you are good at saying things, Ethan muttered. I can stop. Do not. The word came out too fast. Adrian's gaze lifted to him, steady and unreadable, but not cold. Ethan touched the ring with his thumb. Last night, it had been revenge. This morning, it felt like a door he was standing in front of, barefoot and terrified, with Caleb behind him and Adrian on the other side, waiting without pushing. Then the private elevator chimed. Adrian's posture sharpened at once. Ethan turned as one of Adrian's staff stepped in holding a long white box tied with a silver ribbon. The room went very still. Adrian did not move toward it. He only looked at Ethan, letting him understand before anyone said a word. Ethan's pulse climbed into his throat. On the card, written in Caleb's familiar handwriting, were 6 words. Come back before he breaks you. Ethan did not touch the box. He did not need to. The white roses inside were already in the room without being seen, filling the air with every memory Caleb had trained into them. Sorry I missed dinner. Sorry I forgot your birthday brunch. Sorry Ryan needed me more tonight. Sorry you were too sensitive. Sorry, wrapped in petals and tied with ribbon until apology became a costume for control. Adrian looked at the card, then at Ethan. Do you want it opened? He asked. Ethan almost said yes because curiosity was a terrible little animal and his was still alive. Then he imagined those flowers on the kitchen island, clean and perfect and poisonous in the way only pretty things could be. No, he said. His voice shook, but it did not break. Get rid of it. Adrian nodded to the staff member, who carried the box away without a word. No lecture. No, are you sure? No dramatic speech about danger. Just Ethan making a choice and someone obeying it. The simplicity of that nearly undid him. He gripped his coffee mug with both hands and stared at the dark surface until his reflection warped in the steam. He always does that, Ethan said. He makes the cruel thing look thoughtful, so if I stay hurt, I feel ungrateful. Adrian leaned against the opposite counter, far enough to give him air. That is not thoughtfulness. That is packaging. Ethan huffed a small laugh. You really do talk like a therapist with a security team. And you avoid pain with jokes. Ethan looked up sharply. Adrian did not seem pleased with himself for noticing. He only looked steady, like a locked door in a storm. Ethan hated being read. He hated more that Adrian was right. Before he could answer, the new phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. Ethan and Adrian looked at it at the same time. The screen lit up once, twice, then displayed a voicemail notification. Ethan's stomach tightened. I thought nobody had this number. Adrian's face went still. They should not. The staff member returned, expression tense but calm, and set a slim tablet on the island. The number came through a private relay. There is also an email addressed to Mr. Miller. Ethan hated how formal his own name sounded in that room, like he had become part of a case file. Adrian did not reach for the tablet. He looked at Ethan. Again, waiting. Always waiting. It was starting to make Ethan feel more exposed than if Adrian had simply taken over. Ethan picked it up himself. The email had no subject line, just an attachment and one sentence. Ask Blackwood why he really walked into that ballroom. For a moment, the city outside seemed to stop moving. Ethan opened the attachment with a thumb that did not feel like his. A scanned contract filled the screen, legal language stacked in cold black lines. He recognized Caleb's signature immediately, elegant and sharp. He recognized Ryan's too, smaller, nervous, leaning left. Then he saw his own name. Ethan Miller. Not signed, but printed again and again through pages about partnership transfers, image rights, debt responsibility, and a private settlement between the Hart family and Blackwood Holdings. His eyes snagged on one paragraph near the bottom. Upon consent of the named party, Ethan Miller may serve as personal collateral in the resolution of outstanding obligations. The words made no sense at first. They were English, but arranged like cruelty had learned to wear a business suit. Ethan looked at Adrian. The kitchen felt too bright, the strawberries too red, the ring too heavy. What is this? Adrian's jaw tightened. A contract I refused. Ethan stood so quickly the stool scraped behind him. You knew? I knew Caleb was trying to use you. I did not know the full document until last night. But you knew enough. The hurt came fast, hot, and clean. It was not the same as Caleb's betrayal, but it found the bruise Caleb had left and pressed down hard. Adrian did not step closer. Yes. Ethan laughed once, without humor. So when you walked in, that was not about me. It was business. No, then what was it? Adrian's eyes held his, gray and quiet and maddeningly controlled. It was the first time I saw the person named in that contract standing alone in a room full of people who wanted him silent. Ethan wanted to stay angry because anger was easier than confusion. Anger gave him somewhere to put his hands, his breath, his breaking heart. But Adrian's answer landed where he did not want it to. Soft, terrible, honest. Ethan looked back at the contract, at the phrase personal collateral, and felt the last illusion of Caleb crumble into dust. He had not just been cheated on. He had been planned around, measured, priced. Adrian's voice lowered. I claimed you publicly because it made the contract unusable. No one could pretend you were quietly consenting after that. Ethan closed his eyes. The ballroom flashed behind them. The ring. The silence. Done. When he opened his eyes again, Adrian was still across the island, giving him distance like a gift he did not know how to accept. Ethan touched the black ring with his thumb. Last night, he thought he had used Adrian to hurt Caleb. Now he understood Adrian had let himself become the scandal so Ethan could become impossible to sell. Ethan spent the next hour in the guest room with the contract open on the tablet and his knees pulled up to his chest, reading the same sentences until they stopped looking like law and started looking like a map of every moment Caleb had smiled at him while building a cage. Personal collateral. Consent of the named party. Outstanding obligations. The phrases were clean, polished, almost boring, and that somehow made them worse. Caleb had not needed raised voices to hurt him. He had needed paperwork, charm, and people willing to look away. Ethan thought about the anniversary speech card still in his jacket pocket. All those careful words he had written about trust and patience and choosing each other through hard seasons. He wanted to laugh. He wanted to throw the tablet out the window. Mostly, he wanted his old life to have been real for at least 5 minutes. A soft knock touched the door. 3 taps. Adrian's pattern, Ethan realized, and hated that he already knew it. I am not ready to talk, Ethan called. I know, Adrian said from the hallway. I brought tea. Ethan stared at the door. That is a very unfair strategy. It is chamomile. Mildly strategic. Against his better judgment, Ethan opened the door. Adrian stood outside holding a plain white mug, his sleeves still rolled, his expression carefully neutral. He did not try to enter. He just offered the mug. Ethan took it, their fingers barely brushing, and the warmth of the ceramic grounded him so suddenly his eyes stung. You can come in, he said, then immediately regretted how small his voice sounded. Adrian stepped inside but stayed near the dresser, leaving half the room between them. Distance again. Permission again. Ethan was starting to recognize it as Adrian's quiet language. Why did you not tell me last night? Ethan asked. Adrian looked at the dark window, where daylight reflected the city in pale silver. Because you had just been humiliated in public by people you trusted. Giving you a legal document that proved it was worse would not have helped you breathe. And this morning, Caleb sent flowers. Then the contract. He chose the timing. Ethan tightened both hands around the mug. He wanted me to think you were hiding something. I was hiding something. The honesty landed like a stone dropped into still water. Ethan looked up. Adrian's face had not changed, but his eyes looked tired in a way Ethan had not noticed before. I was waiting until I could give you the whole truth, not a shadow of it. Ethan swallowed. You are very annoying when you are reasonable. I have been told. By who? People with poor survival instincts. Ethan almost smiled, and that almost smile hurt more than crying. He set the mug on the nightstand and looked down at the black ring. Am I safe here? Adrian answered immediately. Yes. Not because I am useful? No. Not because I embarrass Caleb? No, then why? For the first time, Adrian did not answer quickly. The silence stretched between them, not empty, but full of things he clearly did not say easily. Finally, he looked at Ethan and said, because when you stood in that ballroom, everyone waited for you to shrink. You did not. I respect that. Ethan blinked hard. Respect was such a strange word after years of being loved, like a project Caleb could edit. It did not sparkle. It did not flatter. It stood solidly in the room and asked for nothing. The new phone buzzed on the bed. Ethan picked it up, expecting another unknown number, but the message came from Ryan. "I need to talk to you. Caleb lied to me too. Please." Ethan stared at the screen until Adrian's voice cut gently through the rising panic. "You do not owe him an answer." Ethan knew that. He did. But Ryan had been his best friend before he had become the person on the screen, and grief did not know how to sort people into clean boxes. It just made a mess and left Ethan standing in the middle of it. "If I meet him," Ethan said slowly, "Caleb will use it." Adrian nodded. "Probably. But if Ryan knows something about the contract, I need to hear it. Then we make the meeting yours." Ethan looked at him. "Mine." Adrian stepped closer, only one pace, careful as ever. "Public place. Daytime. Your terms. I stay nearby, not at your table unless you ask. You walk away the second you want to." Ethan breathed in, then out. For once, fear did not make the choice for him. Neither did anger. He looked at Ryan's message, then at the ring on his hand, then at Adrian waiting in the quiet like a door he could open or close. "Fine," Ethan said, "but I choose the place." Adrian's mouth softened. "Good." Ethan picked up the tea again, warmer now than his hands. "And Adrian?" "Yes. If Caleb thinks he can turn me into paperwork, gossip, or a warning, he is wrong." Adrian's eyes held his, steady and bright as winter glass. "Then we will prove it." Ethan chose a coffee shop 6 blocks from Adrian's building because it was bright, crowded, and aggressively normal, the kind of place where college students argued over laptops, a toddler murdered a blueberry muffin, and a barista shouted names like ruined engagements and hidden contracts did not exist. He arrived early in the camel coat Adrian had insisted was not a gift, only a temporary practical solution to Chicago weather. Adrian waited across the street in a black car, visible through the window if Ethan looked, near but not controlling, watching without claiming the table. Ethan ordered an oat milk vanilla latte because Caleb had always said oat milk tasted like wet cardboard, and tiny rebellions were suddenly medicinal. When Ryan walked in, he looked exactly the same, which was somehow worse. Sandy hair, soft sweater, nervous hands, the face Ethan had trusted through breakups, birthdays, food poisoning, and one terrible Milwaukee lamp emergency. Ryan stopped beside the table. "Can I sit?" Ethan looked at the chair. "That depends on whether you are here to explain or perform." Ryan flinched, and Saturday. "Caleb told me your relationship was already over. He said you were staying through the announcement for a clean transition. He said you had someone else." Ethan laughed softly. "Adrian." Ryan's eyes shone. "Yes." The ordinary coffee shop noise blurred around them. "And you believed him?" Ryan looked down. "I wanted to. That hurt more than a lie." "Because wanting made it easier," Ethan said. Ryan nodded. "Because I was lonely. Because Caleb made me feel chosen. Because I confused attention with love." Ethan understood. Not forgave. Understood, and the difference had teeth. Ryan slid an envelope across the table. The contract was not the only one. Caleb has another agreement with his mother. If he loses the narrative, he loses part of the heart trust. That is why he needed you quiet. Ethan opened it. Email stared back, calm and horrifying. "Manage Ethan. Delay announcement. Keep Ryan private until transfer clears." Something inside Ethan went quiet, not numb this time, focused. "So I was reputation insurance." Ryan whispered, "I helped hurt you. I cannot undo that, but I can stop helping him." Ethan stood with the envelope pressed to his chest. "This does not make us friends. It does not make you brave. And you do not get forgiveness because you finally told the truth." Outside, Adrian waited until Ethan chose the last few steps. "I have proof," Ethan said. "Are you all right?" Adrian asked. Ethan almost lied, almost joked, almost folded into survival. "No, but I am done being useful to people who break me." Back at the penthouse, the envelope lay on Adrian's conference table between legal notes, untouched coffee, and Ethan turning the black ring around his finger like a question. Marisol arrived in red lipstick and a cream pantsuit, looking capable of making a boardroom apologize. She read the emails twice. "Caleb built a story around you because he assumed you would be too embarrassed to correct it." Ethan looked at the anniversary speech card in his pocket, written for a man who never deserved it. "Then I stopped being quiet." The next morning, The Hart Foundation luncheon glittered inside the lakefront museum. All white marble, swan-folded napkins, and white roses. Caleb had chosen like the past had learned interior design. Ethan almost stopped breathing. Adrian did not touch him. In for 4. Out for 6. Caleb crossed the room with his perfect smile. Ethan, I am glad you came. I was worried. Were you? You were overwhelmed after an unfortunate misunderstanding. Ethan unfolded the speech card. Do not call it that. Heads turned. I wrote this because I thought today would be about promises. Loyalty. Patience. Love, choosing someone when things are difficult. But love is not control dressed as protection. It is not silence bought with flowers. It is not paperwork built around someone who was never told the truth. Caleb stepped closer. Ethan, stop. Adrian moved beside him, not in front. Ethan handed the envelope to Marisol. Caleb's smile cracked. You will regret this. Ethan touched the ring, then let his hand fall. No, I regret staying quiet. This is different. The perfect morning unraveled without a raised voice. Outside, by the cold bright lake, Adrian asked, still beside you? Ethan smiled without breaking. Beside me, and no turning back.